Lights. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our discussion of The Love Prescription by Dr. John Gottman. This is our first book club of this kind for therapists. So, hopefully we can all have fun. Remember, this is just for educational purposes. Please feel free to chime in whenever you want. But this is, for us, our team at Couples Counseling ATL, and hopefully any other therapists who'd like to join us in the future. And so today I'd like to start with just a basic overview of the book, and we'll kind of go through the key points, but we'll just talk about it. We'll have a little coffee talk. So thanks again. This book became a New York Times bestseller. It came out in 2022, on the tail end of the pandemic. It was, I think, really talked about by the Gottmans as a prescription for the loneliness epidemic, especially at home. Even, not just in the world, but at home in relationships, what are supposed to be our most intimate romantic relationships, marriages, partnerships. The Gottmans, as well as couples therapists at our practice too, we've been seeing that people have really been struggling in all sorts of ways. And this is meant to take their 40 years of research on thousands of couples and repackage it, I think, in a much more direct sort of way. Of course, I'd like to talk about our criticisms of it too, but I'm clearly a Gottman junkie. I'm very biased towards their work. I've built a career on it, so I love the Gottman work, but it's not a perfect book by any means. But I personally really enjoyed it. They go through 7 days to bring couples to a place, practices putting love into action, not just a feeling, but really making it kind of a very clear way of putting the principles that they've been talking about for years into much more actionable sort of prescriptions. So if we go to the second page, again, this is educational. I'm the director of Couples Counseling ATL. But the main points for this book is really just about demystifying long-term love, really walking people through a 7-day practice meant to be done with your partner, although I'm sure people can still benefit from reading it alone.
I'll definitely agree with that and say that, I think there's something that's really beneficial, especially in terms of therapy books that you could potentially offer to clients. And I think one of the main things that they must be is short, to the point, a few good illustrative examples, but not too many, not delving too deep into the nuances of research and things like that. And as I was reading this, I just kept thinking to myself, like, this is the kind of book that I would recommend to my clients who are maybe struggling with, as they sort of talk about, if you're familiar with the Gottmans and their model of the sound relationship house, those first 3 levels of the house, which are the friendship system, and how important that is for the relationship. I was actually really surprised. I think they have a little bit of a quote in there about this study that they ran, knowing that we've put together 7 principles, we've done all of this research, we know that this works, but what is most effective out of all of that? And they had the 4 groups, the group that did the 2 days of the workshop, day 1 being friendship, day 2 being conflict. And they had the 4 groups. So you had that was the first group. Second group only got day 1, the friendship system. Third group got day 2, only the conflict resolution, conflict management skills. And group 4, just their 7 principles of making marriage work. And interestingly, free sessions with a therapist that apparently no one chose, which I thought was wild. And I loved that. I loved that. There was sort of the most obvious outcome, of course, was that the couples that did the workshop got both the friendship and conflict resolution skills, did the best. But the group that was, had the second highest, sort of levels of benefit were the ones that were doing the friendship system stuff. And I know that so many of my clients come in because they are mired in, communication, as just about every client says, right? But conflict. And they, it can be a real pull to want to jump into those conflicts and to want to try to give them tools for conflict resolution. One of the big takeaways for me, at least, with this book is that we do our clients a disservice if that is the main focus. If we don't also point out that we really need to be working on how they see each other, what is their fondness and admiration for one another, how well do they know each other, all of those elements of those first three levels, the friendship system. That we do them a disservice if we're not focusing on those as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I always use that example of during conflict, you need to have the 5-to-1 ratio. So for every one negative, there's 5 positives, whether it's a gesture, your body language, or something said. But I was surprised at when outside of conflict, the ratio is very different. So it's 20 positives to 1 negative. And I loved that. And that just, again, reiterates the importance of having that positivity in the friendship, in the relationship. So I really liked that reminder, if not seeing that for the first time. But I also really liked that this book was post-pandemic, because the world has changed so much, and just relationship and couples, how they interact, and whether they're both working from home or just one is working from home, that dynamic has really shifted. And I always, before reading this book, had a little caveat of, hey, just keep in mind this research was done before the pandemic. So, make adjustments where needed to where it makes sense. But the book still talks about how things are important still, whether it was pre or post. But I just like the acknowledgement of post-pandemic, and so that there has been updates and that's been considered. So I really, really appreciated that.